Fight. Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and I'm very excited to be back doing pods again after 2 long months of the hiatus. I greatly appreciate the support while I was gone. You can check out the Everything College Basketball magazine. It's officially live as I'm recording this, Friday evening, October 20th. We greatly appreciate all the support. It'd be $10 for hundreds of pages of previews, every single team in college basketball, some really exclusive interviews. That's not what I came here to tell you about primarily. You'll hear more about that in detail on Monday. Looking forward to recording with actually, you know what? Yeah, I'll tell you. The Jim Arrange podcast. We're going to be doing 21 questions previewing the college basketball season again. That was one of my personal favorites last year, and I'm very excited to bring this one back for you as well. The main thing I actually wanted to bring to you before we get into part 1 and part 2 of the NBA over-unders win totals podcast with Grayson Hill. We previewed what we thought the win totals were, where we sprinkled with some of our action. And you're probably wondering, gambling content, that's interesting. Well, as of apparently technically January of 2025, sports betting will be considered legal in the state of North Carolina, at least online-wise. That has passed officially, and it will be released as of January of 2025, which has opened up some really cool avenues here for the show. So I'd like to tell you about the presenting sponsor of any gambling show or segment this season, Sign Up Expert. Sign Up Expert is a really awesome interactive platform where you're able to think, hey, I've been wanting to get into DFS, or I've been wanting to get into sports betting. I didn't know about what the potential was in my area. If you want to take advantage of it and have access to all the exclusive discounts and promotions, a lot of these sites, you can go to signupexpert.com/TPP. That's signupexpert.com/TPP. And you'll see it throughout promotions on the screen throughout episodes and link in the top of the description as always. For anything gambling related, signupexpert.com/TPP. They're now the presenting sponsor of any gambling segment. Using the links does support the show, and we greatly appreciate that support. Thank you so much to the team at Sign Up Expert and BetStamp for making this possible. I don't want to delay it any longer. You'll hear more about BetStamp and Sign Up Expert as we go through the podcast with Grayson. That's where we got a lot of our lines through things like FanDuel for the Over-Unders podcast. Whichever part you're about to listen to as I'm recording this after the fact, I greatly appreciate the support. Basketball is back very, very soon, less than 3 weeks, and so is this show. Enjoy the episodes with Grayson. As you heard at the top, talking about what we did in the Eastern Conference, of course, we thank you again to Sign Up Expert for being the presenting sponsor for anything we do gambling related this year around the Two Pointers podcast. We'll get the introduction quick here for those that are listening to the West only, maybe because their team cares. Welcome back. Glad to have you. We're going to pretend like we didn't just spend the last hour and 20 minutes talking about the Eastern Conference, but glad to have you back. Anything you want to share that wasn't shared in the Eastern Conference preview, or do we just want to make sure we have plenty of time for this just behemoth of Western Conference? I don't even know what word I want to use.
If you thought we were too cut and dry with the East, buckle up for this, because we might have 3 teams the same the entire conference, as opposed to the opposite where you have 3 teams different. This is going to be a bloodbath, as it normally is. It's the Wild West, and that definitely directly translates to the NBA.
I actually, funny enough, wore this hat because of the reference to their best song, "Don't At Me." Welcome to the jungle. That is the NBA was kind of the pun, and I didn't really know. I don't have a whiteboard. I moved about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and I have no way of putting puns on the screen anymore, so that was the way I was going to put the pun on. So we can ignore that. I'll cut it out probably. But a couple things at the top. These are over-under win totals, since I forgot to mention this earlier. These are courtesy of FanDuel. If you are interested in signing up for anything, like I mentioned in the open, we did the ad read at the top without having to have Grayson sit here and watch me talk for 6 minutes. The win total courtesy of FanDuel. If you're interested in signing up for any sports book, whether that's FanDuel, Daily Fantasy, Underdog, any of that stuff, Sign Up Expert will give you a promotional code through 2 Pointers. Click the link in the description, select the area you're in, and you'll be able to find out what's available for you. There's a lot more detail about that. You can hear that in the open with the disclosures as well. So a couple things. Like I said, FanDuel, these are the lines there. These were sent to me by you about a week and a half ago. Vaguely think that I don't think they changed much if they did at all. So just no problem there. People are going to be hearing this a couple days before the season. We did this in the East. We'll do this in the West as well. I have one additional question for you to kind of just get the juices flowing, even though for the listeners, they'll get the juices flowing. For us, we're an hour and a half deep. So here we go. We're going to play a little game just like we did before. At the beginning, we played a game where I basically was like, are you flabbergasted or would you be flabbergasted? And I think the analogy I used that was terrible was if the magical basketball genie, someone rubbed the lamp, I appeared and was like, this team wins the title. And I tell you that now, and you look at that and have this moment again in June, you would be like, there's no way in blank. So I'm going to go through all 15. For recap, we had 3 out of the 15 teams in the Eastern Conference. I have a feeling that number is going to go this direction, up. So, Denver, would you be floored if Denver won the title?
Not last year, not this year. No.
Okay. Golden State.
Yes.
You would be flat. Like, you would be absolutely zero chance they win the title.
Kind of about 0, but yeah.
Because flabbergasted is, I went with flabbergasted as like, if they won the title, there's not a sliver of doubt in your mind that they couldn't win one. I think they could.
Yeah, I think I'm there.
Okay. All right. So
not by much, but I think I'm there.
We're going to differentiate some, I'm sure. So you think they could not probably win one at all? All right. I would disagree. We'll get to why in a little bit. The Lakers.
No.
June, someone holds up a trophy, and it's the Warriors. You're flabbergasted. If it's the Lakers, you're not. Okay. Sacramento.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. All right. This is actually gonna be really fun. Then I have no idea where this is going. I just said Sacramento. Memphis. John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Taylor Jenkins are holding the trophy, celebrating in FedEx Forum, if that's still what it's called at this point. Is there a 1% chance in your mind that we're celebrating over barbecue in Memphis?
It might be not, 1, maybe 1. Yeah,
but it could happen.
Yeah, I'd put them barely above Golden State. Like they're in my eyes, they're the end of that or the start of the tier of teams I don't think could win it.
Okay, Phoenix.
No.
So there's no chance Phoenix wins the title. Zero chance.
If Durant finally chases the ring correctly, where he's the best player, then yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna say no for the sake of the example. Your Oklahoma City Thunder.
This year, yeah.
Okay. 0. All right. Yeah. Dallas. Luka Doncic holds up a trophy that's not a European League trophy.
Yeah, and I hate it because he's so good. Like you hate to put a player of that caliber in that can't win a title tier, but his starting point guard is still a starting point guard. So
Minnesota.
Yes.
Yeah. 0 shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Clippers. Kawhi Leonard holds up a trophy just like he did in Toronto, north of the border. And
but
in your mind.
I'm not, but I would also ask who figured out how to turn injury sliders off, because that's what it's going to take.
So you're saying that they could. They're saying there's some sliver of a chance, or there's 0 chance.
Yeah.
There is a sliver. Okay.
Okay.
So we have
sliver.
So you have Denver, you have the Lakers, you have Memphis barely, and you have the Clippers so far. That's 4. Utah.
I beat stuff. Yeah.
I'm just waiting to see, like, are you inserting any adjectives to make this even more fun is basically what I'm looking at. And then we're just going to assume that New Orleans, Portland, San Antonio, barring Victor Wembanyama becomes the second coming of Jesus Christ.
I don't care if there's 2 of him in San Antonio. No. That's
2 of him. And then, obviously, actually, I'll show it now. I was going to wait till later, but one of the coolest throwbacks in the NBA, by the way. Shout out to the Rockets. These were half off for San Diego Day when I was there last year to watch the Lakers beat them by 38. The Rockets will not be winning a title either. So here is why I like this question for the West. Okay, you had 4 teams. And spoiler, I had more than 4. I had a little bit more than 4. Let's be real for a second. There's a few that I think that you probably are less optimistic than you probably could be or should be. I have Denver, Golden State, the Lakers. The Kings is hard, man, because I really do. I mean, like, if everything...
Not that I want it to happen, but yeah.
If it happened, though, I would probably be sitting here with you after a game blank through blank, and we're on at God knows what time and being like... we would be sitting in silent. Like, the audio file would be a straight line. Like someone
silence in the closed caption.
Yeah. So Denver, Golden State, the Lakers, The Grizzlies, I actually really do think if they won it, I wouldn't actually be that shocked, or I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have a heart attack probably. Phoenix,
Yep.
I mean, just based on top alone, I just have to be like, well, yep. I mean,
Right.
somebody's got to be the best player, and that's it. I have 5.
Yeah, and I think my list may have been shortened just because of the fact that you have to go through Denver to even get to the NBA Finals.
Fair.
So
This is a
that
good
that
point.
fact in itself, um, I draw the line at my Thunder fan at an NBA title. That's not now next year, of course, but not this year. I
Okay.
gotta see a year of Chet. God willing, him get a full season. But yeah, so yeah, the Nuggets alter my response to the questions because of how good they are.
So there's one that we clearly disagreed on that I cannot wait to get to, and it won't be long if we're going in the order like we did in the East. We'll go off what I had written down and just see how far off we were. Um, I want to ask this first. If I gave you $1 million, I don't care where the money came from. If FanDuel gave me $1 million to give you, how about that? If Sign Up Expert gave me $1 million and said, "Here you go, congrats on the
Right.
partnership." If I gave you $1 million and I said you had to put it on a Pacific Division winner, and there's no gun to your head scenario here, like I just want you to win the most money. All right, we'll split it. To put on a Pacific Division winner, who in the name of God would you put it on? And here I'll recap for the people who don't understand divisions or don't realize that they're actually kind of important in the NBA, even though they're irrelevant
Yeah,
in the grand
they
scheme of the
do.
way
Yeah.
we look at now. They're relevant for guys like us who like to make money. You have Golden State, the Lakers, the Kings, the Suns, and the Clippers. Those are your 5 teams in the Pacific Division. If I gave you $1 million and said you need to make money on one of them winning, who are you putting it on?
Well, the favorite is Phoenix, so just by default, I'm going to get a 3 million shot at them. It's not going to take them. So I really probably would put the Lakers down and just pray for full season of LeBron James, full season of Anthony Davis, the supporting pieces playing as they should. Austin Reeves having a great season. D'Angelo Russell probably needs to stay in town for that to happen, despite the extreme tradability of his contract, depending on what their needs are as we get to that point in the season. But yeah, for a free shot, I'd take the Lakers, just value alone.
Yeah, I don't have the odds in front of me anymore from FanDuel. I'll pull them up later if it matters. But it, I wanted to ask that because when we get into the nitty gritty of these teams in just a second, you'll see why that question's so relevant. Because, and we're about to be at 10 minutes, and we're obviously got to get to the first team, which I'm sure we won't take long on. But there's a few lines. The other question I had, obviously, just like in the East, most unsure about, most confident, most shocked by. We'll get to those as we go. So the Pacific Division winner thing is going to be really, really weird when we get to it very quickly. So Denver. I mean, here we are. I feel like I'm having deja vu. It's just, instead of it being 11:30, it's 10 Eastern on this recording instead of like it was in June. But Denver 52.5. And honestly, you could have told me this was 58.5, and I probably would have taken the over. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that their counterparts at the top of the East were higher was a bit surprising.
Fair. Good point.
I maybe haven't read up on the impact of Bruce Brown to the extent that I should have, but I mean, anything under
We saw it.
55, I think you have to
We
take.
saw it. We did see it, though. Granted, against an 8 seed, but we did see it. We did see it.
That's a fair point. Anything under 55, I have to take because I think they will have the best record in the NBA. So I'm happy to take over 52.5. I think they will be the best team in the association, let alone the West. I think obviously we just saw pretty definitive proof of that through their playoff run. A little bit of everything. Jokic cemented his status right now as the best player in the world. I don't see much reason for that to change. Jamal Murray is pretty darn close to the dueling in the bubble with Spida Jamal Murray, and he was well close enough to propel them to a title as well in his own right. So I think that the team largely intact, led by that duo, is certainly worthy of the top seed in the West.
Yeah, there's a Jamal Murray stat that I'm looking up right now to make sure I had it right. There was no way I could have made this a trivia showdown question just because of the formality of the statistic, but to think that he's not an All NBA level, like there's some other debates I've seen all over, like you said, the cesspool that Twitter was in the East there. But it's a great point because like the fact that he's not considered at the level, I mean, accolade wise, he's had the injuries, they in and out of the lineup. Jokic was the best player in the world, that kind of thing. But like the fact that he's not considered in the same vein as some of these guys that we talk about every single day, it just sucks. And I hope that this is the year where like they both make All NBA first and whatever second team or third team. So the NBA players to average, and I didn't find this till after we recorded Game 5 of last year for the finals, but NBA players to average 20 points per game or more, 5 rebounds or more, and 10 assists per game or more in a finals series. Those names are Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and you guessed it, Jamal Murray.
That's incredible. I believe it from watching it. Yeah.
4 people have done that, and Magic Johnson,
That's
Michael
a
Jordan,
fair
LeBron James.
Mount Rushmore, and then him. I mean, that is good company.
3 of the best 5 players of all time have done that,
right.
And Jamal Murray has also done that. So, again, I have no context for that statistic. I just wanted to say it because it was that insane. I had it favorited for this podcast, and I made sure I remembered. So, Denver 52.5, and honestly, I could spend an entire show just talking about Denver. And I looked into some things about Denver that I really found interesting. I might save it for like an open or a solo pod in a few weeks here as the season gets kicked off. Heck, I might even save it for the overreactions pod. I'm sure that's, I don't know how I'm going to do that this year with the way the college basketball season is going to fall now a little bit early, but we'll see. Denver 53-29 last year, 52.5. I mean, we would be idiotic to take, even with an injury of some kind. I just don't, and knock on wood with that, but we'd be dumb not to take them. So they were 34-18 against their conference last year, and they were also 10-6 against their division, which I know a lot of those division games, because of the way the NFL does it too, like week 16, 17, 18, when it's supposed to matter. I know they try to not to put it on 18 week, but the way that the NBA does it, they try to have these divisional matchups at the end of the year, and that's when Jokic sat and basically lost himself the third-time MVP there. So right. I know that the division stat is kind of a lucrative thing there, but I think the division record stuff does really kind of give you an idea of how a team's going to stack up against some of the teams in their division that may have not improved or may have, and that's what we'll get to with the Pacific. But there's some teams that had a really weird finish with their division last year, and Denver was one of them, but I have to take it with a grain of salt. So that point will matter more in just a minute. Anything else on Denver? Since we're only 15 minutes in, we got plenty of time. I'm sure we won't spend more than 30 seconds on Houston later. So,
I mean, if there's one team to have just completely bulletproof benefit of the doubt, it's Denver. To match at the very least what they accomplished regular season. You mentioned the Jokic sitting and all that, and the Daryl Morey information war that led to their playoff exit, and Jokic won a title. So I'm sure that given the choice of trophies, Jokic would not swap team for individual. So I think that worked out for him rather well.
They were 19-22 on the road last year, and I think if they're going to get to that total, that may have to get a little better. But then again, they were 34-7 in the Mile High. So
right, when the flip side is you lose a home game a month, that's more palatable.
I'm trying to give us reasons to question it, but I think it's forcing it. So
until proven otherwise, yeah.
Golden State I have at number 2. And this is where I brought this up earlier, which is why I love the gun to your head question or whatever I said earlier, the flabbergasted question, where I was basically like, hey, here we are looking at over-unders and going, the second highest over-under for me isn't second, so why? Golden State didn't get worse this offseason. I don't think they got resoundingly better either. But if this team's fully healthy, I know 48.5 is kind of high, especially for, again, bloodbath of the West. But why can't they be 49-33? Again, I know that, Father Time is kind of, not for the play style that the Splash Brothers are, isn't exactly hurting them, but Clay's not exactly the healthiest fellow in the last 3.5 years either. So I guess my point would be, if I'm looking at the continuity, we talked about that word a lot in the Eastern Conference earlier. If we're looking at the continuity of at least what my best players are going to be at their stage in their career, the Lakers, the Kings, the Grizzlies, the Suns, the Thunder, the Mavericks, the Timberwolves, and et cetera, the Clippers, can't forget those guys down there later. I can't look at those guys and not go Golden State's going to be competitive if their best 3 players play. And that's kind of where I was like, if someone's not going to suck in the West because of the bloodbath that it is, 49-33 is reasonable. But they'll probably go 47-34 or whatever the alternative is, and I'll probably be really mad. So there we go. That was kind of my sat on that one for a few hours before I really wanted to put that out there, and I changed it 3 times. So
yeah, my thing
you wanted
with
to put them there, didn't you? You wanted to put them at 2, didn't you?
My first iteration had them 30.
Okay,
and
so we're not terrible.
I just started thinking about, okay, well, you mentioned you're pulling out the core of the dynasty and what have you and all that. And I started looking at all these teams around there. I'm like, well, they could be healthy.
Yeah.
I think they're healthy. It's better than Golden State's healthy. And then I did it again and again and again. And it's like, that's not really like I tried to talk myself into that being an exclusive thing that could propel Golden State to, the levels of hosting a playoff series. And, I don't think anybody's competing with Denver regular season win total wise, but, pressuring them slightly from the two spot. And I just couldn't do it. I don't know if it's the resounding images of Draymond Green soccer punching teammates in preseason last year that led to Poole being banished to exile. Then, whatever you think about him, they're worse off not having him, whatever that may mean behind closed doors. And I mean, does Kuminga finally take a step? I mean, they again banished Wiseman to Detroit, which may not be banishment for long, but they have jettisoned the pieces that could have replaced the guys they have now, whether it be an injury basis, age basis, whatever you want to say. And Bob Myers abandoning this team in the night tells me something, and it's nothing good. Like I did not like that piece of it at all. He was the architect behind it. He built the whole thing. He makes us think Steve Kerr is some Hall of Fame coach. I just don't like how the architect decided now's the time to get off the bus. Like this is the end of my time here, and it's because he loaded up the cap with, in my opinion, inflated contracts. But when you win that many titles, you kind of have to. There are cliffs coming for the team, for the individuals. I don't think Curry's going to fall off one this year. His game pretty well translates to longevity. If he's healthy, which I truly want to see him healthy. I just don't think that he is at the stage of his career where he can drag this team. Should Clay, should Draymond continue to regress, should the young guns behind them continue to not live up to expectations, I don't know that that translates to 2 in the West, to 3 in the West, to even, I mean, on down. They'll be a playoff team, but we may have seen the end of the Warriors as a true title contender, um, in spite of Steph's greatness for once, not because of it.
Yeah, I am not going to be surprised with again either result, and that's kind of basically what I said already. But I kind of want to. First of all, I'm just looking at his like basketball reference page just to kind of like while you were talking, make sure I had everything right for when I started talking again. To think he's going to finish his career at could be north of 43% from three. It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway,
Right.
so a couple of things. Gary Payton, right? Jonathan Kuminga, we've seen some flashes from. Whether you love him or hate him, in year 12, Corey Joseph is somebody that will play meaningful minutes for them in the playoffs. Probably won't be a ton, but he's going to be somebody they rely on. They think the world of Brandon Pajemski, who it took me the entirety of his sophomore year in college to get his name right, but here we are, Brandon Pajemski. I'll get to somebody else, and I'm looking at in just a second. Moses Moody, Kevon Looney took a huge jump last year, just as like this dominant rebounder and mobile big. Klay Thompson, whether you think Usman Garuba, Jerome Robinson, Rodney Magruder, and whatever, those guys probably aren't going to play. Dario Saric, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Trace Jackson Davis. I will put that on record right now. He's playing minutes for this team.
I think he will too. Yeah.
Immediately. Like, I mean, some of this stuff, some of the passes that we saw in the preseason, like him getting these passes in the pick and roll from Steph, like, I mean, the dude's going to play, right? He's going to be super, super meaningful for them. Very Kevon Looney-esque, honestly, at that point. Same height. And he's honestly bigger and stronger, so it should be really fun and a better passer. So anyway, all that being said, the point I'm making is there, and I've left out a guy that you're probably like, weird how we've went through that whole roster and you left out one really important player that got traded there. I have an overarching thing I want to go over really fast, even though we're 20 minutes in. Their best 8 is going to be one of the best 8 if it's all healthy and playing in the West, and that was part of the reason I went this way. Here's the other thing, though. Here's the devil's advocate talking to myself in an open kind of deal. Is Chris Paul a Warrior at the trade deadline?
No, I didn't even get to that either because when the plan coming into the season is for you to not get hurt and play 30 games and then just suddenly flip a switch and be ready for a deep playoff run, that's just setting yourself up for disaster. Whether he's not ready, whether he's ready, gets hurt, just trying to thread the needle as far as how much he can play and play to the level we've come to expect from him, even in the advanced stage of his career, that is just asking for trouble all over the place. And they're almost better off not even doing it and selling at the deadline with him. And what that brings back and how immediate that can contribute, who knows? That's going to be some mind-numbing trade machine things because of his contract. But I also don't buy into that whole idea that he's just going to come off the bench in the spring and propel them to a title or a 2 seed or whatever it may be. I love Chris Paul as a player, which is why I hate it. I just don't think that's an experiment that's going to reap a lot of benefit for them, for Paul individually or the Warriors as a team.
We echo the same thoughts. That was my fear, was what does that mean if he isn't a Warrior after February 15th or whatever it is this year? And honestly, if I'm thinking about it, whether he played 30 games before the deadline or 10, I honestly can't sit here and tell you that unless the package back is something we're just not seeing, like you said. I think him being on the team after February is probably a better thing for them, and they'll just figure it out, right? Because this is probably,
Right.
whether we think Steve Kerr is a great coach or not, we both agree. I don't think he's. I'll leave it at that. But Chris Paul, I think, is ultimately, whether he plays 50 games or 15, he's going to make a difference in those 15 or whatever that number of games is, and I
Oh,
think that will
absolutely.
matter.
Yeah.
And that's if he's healthy. I don't understand how they won't be able to make it work with him. So you won't close the lineup with him and Curry together. That's the issue. Like and we're getting into kind of lineup flexibility there. It starts to get weird, but it's a question mark that I don't even think we need to even be talking about, because it may not even be a talking point in March because he may not even be on the team. I have to ask: is that the hardest? Because I guess he technically did play for your team, right? He played for a team for a year, so I
Oh
guess
yeah,
the
no,
way to ask
absolutely.
it. So the way to ask
Was
it would
an
be:
MVP caliber level too. So I mean, yeah.
is it harder to watch him play for the Warriors or another team after leaving the Thunder, or is there somebody else that stings more? It stings from just however you want to answer that question, but I mean, it's hard to watch him on the Warriors, I have to assume.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, I mean, who knows how much I'll have to subject myself to that? But I mean, there are stars in the past that are much softer and much less worthy recognition from the Thunder aspect of it, that I won't mention. But yeah, I mean, for the potential last year on a contender, I mean, he was a playoff team in Oklahoma City, but we were
Yeah.
not winning title that year. Um, for him to potentially blow it a year or two too late in Golden State sucks, because he does not have a
Yeah.
title to this point, and he's running out of time to be a true direct contributor to a title team. There's
Yep.
always that 13th seed somewhere, but that's not obviously going to resonate with his career like it would be if he was playing 20 minutes a night. So that aspect is tough too. And I wanted to just say, you throw enough guards in the court that have Hall of Fame resumes, they'll figure it out when it's out. It's just not going to happen. Brooklyn tried it; they barely won a playoff series. So I mean, it's just not conducive to success, especially when, again, you have to go through Denver, and that's not the only team I think would handle them relatively easily in a 7-game series. And you mentioned road record for Denver. Golden State was atrocious last year. It took them like 5 weeks to win a road game. I don't know what was wrong with them.
11 and
You know,
30. 11 and 30.
that's terrible. I mean, that's embarrassing.
Quick math.
The
That's the
Rockets were
third
8 and
worst.
33.
There
So
it is.
yeah,
Yep. That was the tie. That was second worst if you look at the tie. Yeah, second worst record on the road in the Western Conference. And
I mean
actually, I think it was second worst because there's a three-way tie for last. So yeah, second
yeah.
worst in the entire league. Yeah.
Not to pull the coach through the mud again, but that's you can't do that and expect me to. Well, me personally, I can't look past that and think, okay, they'll figure it out. They'll win 21 games on the road. That's unfathomable. It's just not going to happen. Whether they add Paul, they trade Paul for certainly younger pieces that contribute. No matter what the draft picks do in the immediate future, it's just that's something off the court that maybe with Poole gone is fixed. But I still think that Draymond's the ultimate problem there. He has a history of driving players out of town, so I don't think that was necessarily all on Poole, or will be all resolved with Poole gone. Um, but I just cannot put them. They're not my top four, so this slide is not going to stop at 3 or 4. But
Yeah,
I
and
do
that's
not have them too.
the way we'll keep going because at 25 minutes we've gotten through 2 teams. I love the West already, but the way we'll do it is we'll stick to my list, and I'll just ask you where you have a team relative, and we'll just kind of have to bounce between the two because at that point, don't worry, this might not be the biggest difference in where we have 2 teams as you saw
Right.
across the ticker
Yeah.
there at the bottom. So, who do you have it to? I guess I don't know if you said that.
I have Phoenix just
Okay.
because that trio is so ridiculously good. I don't
It's
care if
nuts.
a Kogi starts, like whatever. Throw anybody in there.
Oh
I mean,
God.
the Nurkic piece of it, I hate. Um, I would have felt much better had they had a good center in their starting lineup, which they did like 3 weeks ago. That's going to keep them winning the title. They're not going to. I mean, now would I be shocked? No, but reasonably speaking, Nurkic on Jokic is going to be unsafe for the eyes of young children across this country should they match up in the playoffs because that's not good if he's even on the court because we've not seen that a lot lately. Aiton had his tenure there. That was what it was. But that is, in my opinion, a downgrade, unfortunately. So it's just one of those things I want it similar to Chris Paul. I want it so badly for Beal to finally be rewarded, I guess.
Nice.
Uh,
Yeah, I guess I like the
with
little
being
caveat
really,
there.
really on a good team, and not his talent not being wasted wherever that may be left in the tank for him, which I think is a lot, honestly. And I have so much more faith in this Phoenix team in the regular season than I do the playoffs because you could argue that's 2 separate seasons entirely. I mean, there are teams like the Sixers that pride themselves on regular season accomplishments and individual awards, and we see that happens in the playoffs because they typically have 4 wins or less. So that may be the fate of Phoenix. We've seen it with Durant every season in Brooklyn, pretty much, as he tried this approach in the East. But I mean, I haven't even said Devin Booker's name. He is an incredible player, and he could make up for some of the weird, whatever issues they come up with the absolute lack of depth. The fact that Nurkic is now their center. Durant may miss some time. Beal may miss some time. Beal may need a little bit of time to get up to speed in the system. Although, I mean, the whole team is kind of thrown together in the last half of the season and the offseason. So, I mean, there may be some growing pains there, but I think that just that trio is so good that I think they can win regular season games. Now, beyond the regular season, I would not say I'm super high on them. But for the purpose of the first 82 games of the NBA season, I think they can be the 2 seed in the West.
So this is where the train fell off the tracks after Denver. So here's where I got to figure out how to get this train back on the track. So I have Phoenix at 6, and I basically have the exact opposite opinion. So I really don't have anything to share much, but I think that they'll limp their way into the playoffs, and then their talent alone will make it basically the exact opposite of how you felt. So,
Okay, yeah.
and it's not far fetched to think that that's a difference between 2 and 6. I have them at 6. I have 52.5 as under, which again will answer the question as I had in
I'm under
next
too.
to it. Yeah, and that so you're under even though they're the 2 seed. That just shows you the ridiculous records of the West, how they'll be under probably. I basically just wrote down no chance this team stays healthy. I mean, at the end of the day, if every good player on this team, let's just call it their best 5 plays, they probably none of them probably play more than 65 games. Which is totally fine, fair. Which means someone's going to lose games for them. And even if I do like this depth better than I think I did a month before the rest of those deals happened, then I just have to, something has to give, and it's an under for me at that point. To recap, Golden State, I had 48.5. I had over. Did you have over or under for that? You had under.
I had under, yeah.
Okay. So regardless of where we have the seeds, we're trying to make sure we still at least mention where we had that line. So number 3, we probably are pretty close on this. I have the Lakers at number 3. You made a comment earlier about some teams that that they would have the Golden State Warriors would have a problem playing, and I probably assumed that was the Lakers were one of those teams. The biggest point for me, really, and I know that this is technically my team and all that stuff, and I would love to sit here and tell you all the things and why and stuff. Honestly, the only thing that really, because this is not necessarily a playoff prediction show, it's more of we want to make sure we get this over under right for a lot of reasons that will be left unsaid. The team's good enough to sustain if there are injuries. point blank. If there's
Right.
major injuries that aren't season ending, the team is good enough to get to the 3 seed in the West. And to make that Pacific question even harder for me, obviously that would mean that they would be the second best team in the Pacific, but I have them literally winning 2 games behind the Warriors. I had the 49 for the Warriors technically as the over, and I have Los Angeles Lakers 47.5 over. I have them at 48. I don't have much more than that. So that was kind of the team's good enough to sustain if there's injuries. So do you have the Lakers at 3?
Yeah, I do. I just think that they're going to care a whole lot less about seeding as long as they're in the top half of the West because I think they have so much more potential
That's fair.
beyond their regular season. I think the Suns. I mean, we had what was it 2 or 3 years ago that both one seeds, Utah and Philly, did make the conference finals. I think that
Yeah.
we could see some top seed carnage in the West similar to that. I have a lot more belief postseason wise with this Lakers team, but I think that they're a lot more cognizant of, you get to game 75, it doesn't really matter. It shouldn't matter. I'll say that. If they're in this position, they're not going to care. The bottom half of this bracket is going to be a mess. And now, they may try and play the matchup that didn't work very by trying to duck Miami because they all got beat by them anyway. So, again, the Lakers are above that. I don't think LeBron's going to want to, lose one, win two, or something stupid like that to set up a playoff opponent. I think they're good enough to beat anybody.
Yep.
They play in the first round, especially. The offseason, I think they got better and they were given an impossible hand financially and all these other things, but I think they really did get better because they have depth now. You're not terrified after 2 guys come off the bench anymore. Christian Wood, Gabe Vincent, Cam Reddish, Taurean Prince has had moments in the league. Hood-Schifino is a quality draft pick for a team that you wouldn't expect to have many assets. I think they did pretty well with that. Jackson Hayes needs mentorship. I think that's a good place for him to have it. Should he, stop acting like a Hornet for once and play basketball as a fully focused NBA player, I think he's going to be really good. And this is more of that clock is ticking quickly for LeBron before he joins the Southern Oklahoma City. So I do want to see him win one more and arguably the best franchise in the history of the sport with the Lakers. So as much as Twitter would hate that, I don't care. It's a cesspool, like I said. But I've got Lakers 3, and I have over for their win total of 47.5.
Yeah, the clock is also ticking on the fact that we are 3 teams in the West at 35 minutes. I love this. With that being said, Sacramento I have at 4, and I have the over as well because, again, when people hear the over-unders, they have to realize that it could actually only be 1 win over, not like this resounding, we think they're going to be this 55-win team. And Denver, as we establish, is probably going to be the only 50-win team. I think I just realized that live. So, because you had Phoenix second. Yeah. And their over-under is 52, and you went under, which technically I guess could be 51.
They may squeak, right?
Yeah. But, I mean, so 2 50-win teams, and last year, let's recap, there were, 2. So maybe Denver's the only one. Maybe Denver's the only one now I look at it. So anyway, Sacramento, 44.5 for me at the 4 seed. I have them at 45 and 37 or 46 and 36, or however that math adds up perfectly.
Yeah, they were a really, really, really fun team to watch last year. I think they finished the 3 seed. I think that they not a whole lot of material change necessarily. I mean, if you want to count Terrence Davis, Rashawn Holmes, okay. I thought they did pretty well in the draft. Shout out to Jalen Slauson over at Furman.
It's my guy.
JaVale McGee will provide TNT with material and good veteran presence, I think. Whatever they get out of Duarte, that's just one of those things that you can kind of try it until it works. And if it doesn't, you have more than enough guard depth to kind of nip that in the bud, wherever it may end up. But I think that beam is going to be pretty lit up this season again. Just the fact that they have young players with room to grow. They've got Sabonis, who took a big step. They've got De'Aaron Fox, who is one of the more clutch players in the NBA. I think he won that award. If he didn't, he should have. There's a lot to like about the Sacramento
We said
team.
that we would riot if he didn't. So, yeah, he definitely
did.
It was one of those things. The stats were like, it would have been like the biggest fix if he had not won. But yes,
Right. And I mean,
um, one
that's
guy. One guy you didn't mention too is talking about getting better. I think they definitely got better around the margins. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking like rookies. Colby Jones might play 12 minutes a game. I mean, Slauson, as
right.
much
Yeah.
as I love him, probably isn't playing. I guess meaningful playoff minutes. But
Right.
they added Sasha Vesnikov, the 28-year-old rookie
That's
from
right.
I
Yeah.
believe he technically played Bulgaria or whatever. He's from Bulgaria. And he
Who will
played in
get run.
Spain. Yeah, I hope a 28-year-old rookie who was dominant overseas. I would hope that they would be Mike Brown. Obviously, is one of the best coaches in the NBA right now, at least
Right.
recently. Vesnikov had 12 points in 11 minutes in their first game against Toronto in the preseason. And I know I have made it very clear in every sport that I've ever talked about publicly that I do not watch preseason for the most part at all, other than I watched parts of the Chet Wemby game a few weeks ago, or a few days ago. But you know, 12 points in 11 minutes on 4 of 7 shooting. Like that's basically what he did in Europe. So they're going to get
That's
him
eye
better.
opening. Yeah.
So that was really all I had was just that guy is going to matter. And there's another international ad. I think we will get to him
Oh,
who I'm
yes, we
trying to
will.
remember. Oh yeah, we will. And I'm trying to leave you time too. I'm trying to leave you time for that. So I guess to answer the question, do you have over as well? I heard. And then do you have Sacramento at 4? Did we land on that together? I think we did.
Yes to both of those.
Cool. All right. So Sacramento at 4. I don't think I literally wrote down exactly what you said. I don't expect much regression. So
Right.
this one's weird. So I have Memphis at 5, and I'm gonna let you. Do you have them at 5? I guess before I ask the question, do you have them at 5?
I do not.
Okay. I have them at 5 only because I had Phoenix at 6 because of the under and the regression and the injuries and the season, that kind of thing I
Right.
talked about
Right. Right.
already earlier. Do you have Memphis to make this not less weird? Do you have Memphis at 6?
Yeah, they're 6 million.
All right, so they're all right. So we have our top 6 locked in. We agree that we have the same top 6 but in different order. Got that? Okay. So we've
Yeah.
drawn the line in the sand, which is perfect. This is for this next part. So Memphis 45.5. I actually don't have an answer because I genuinely have no freaking clue. A,
That's the
what I
thing.
think
Yeah.
will happen, and B, how impactful John Morant's loss will be. Because people were talking about Desmond Bane being this otherworldly, he's going to be fine with Gargano, averaged 25 and 5 assists, and I don't know. I love Desmond Bane. I think that 2020 COVID year, it's not scouting him properly because we couldn't, him falling to 30th. He probably should have been a lottery pick, whatever. I don't know. 25 games without job, but Jaren Jackson Jr. takes another level. In all bold letters, I wrote most unsure for this one because I don't even actually technically have an answer. But 45.5. If I said that Sacramento is 44.5 and they win 45 or 46, then I'll just for the safety of this where you probably went. I want to see where you went. I went with Memphis under, but I don't feel great about it.
I did just because the nature of the beast of this whole segment of teams, and I have them 6.
That's true. Good point.
They probably should be a spot higher, but that's kind of where I let my bias run free. It's just I have full faith in Marcus Smart pulling his locker room together, along with Steven Adams, another great guy with his head on straight. But 25 games is a long time in the NBA. You only get 82 games in a season. It's almost a third of the entire season. And as far as regular season is concerned, I think if they get in the playoffs, all things considered, they're happy with it. I don't think their team's going to be gunning for playoff seeding, especially if they're even close to hosting. I mean, I could see that playing a factor, but I think they're a top 8 team. I think that I have enough faith in John Morant as a player, individual aside, that when he does come back, he will come back with a vengeance, wanting to make it up to his team, his city, etc. And I think that will propel them to 6. I just think they will lose enough ground in those first 6 weeks to where they will not be hosting a playoff series, but they will be free of the play-in, even if it's the last spot that's exempted from that.
All right. I don't have anything to add on Memphis because I do actually think that they'll be exactly where we just talked about. So honestly, I wouldn't be adding anything much there. I do think Triple J, if healthy, I know the stuff with the international that he doesn't really fit the international game. I know he can stretch the floor a little bit. We've struggled with bigs, and like that was why Joel Embiid deciding to play for the American national team next year is like this
That's important.
ridiculous news story because we've just been horrible at the big position. We haven't had a good big, at least like true center to match up against. Like Jonas Valanciunas made the U.S. look silly, and I know I'm going on a tangent about this more than I should be, but like Dwight Howard was the last good post player we had in the Olympics, and he wasn't even somebody that, I mean, Dwayne Wade was the best player on those teams, and he was
Right.
6'2". So, all right. I think we probably have the same team here, and I don't feel like I have a place to speak here because I don't feel like I need to. But I'll just tell you this: I know that from 40 wins to 44 and a half being an over for me, I know that a 45 win jump or a 5 win jump would be kind of asinine based on all the criteria laid out for the previous 6 teams. But sometimes, I told you, I every year have a young team that I just believe in and I just love, and I just think that they deserve it. And this has nothing to do with who's sitting across from me on this StreamYard. Um, but I'm not Bill Simmons 4 seed here. Let's be upfront about that.
No, me neither. No.
But for crying out loud, I like almost every player that's going to play meaningful minutes for them in some capacity as an NBA player. And I can't say the same about the other teams behind you. So 44 and a half over 7 seed. They'll win the play in. But for crying out loud, if there's some injuries for Phoenix, the way I have it laid out on the screen right here, they technically could make the playoffs without the play in. There is a world that happens, and I'm not flabbergasted. So have your fun, and then we'll blitz through the next 8, 9, 10, 11 as we go, because I would like you to have your fun here.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to put him 6, but then I was like, I could put him 7, having beaten Durant round 1. That made the decision for me, so I put them 7. You mentioned that every player is going to play meaningful minutes. That's not been true yet, and I think that being true now with the addition of Micic, another very talented former EuroLeague MVP, has a championship over there. That's not just some league you can just gloss over, like Overtime Elite or whatever else that we have over here. I think there's just true meaning to that and the experience that brings. Oladipo, it's good to have him back in town. I don't think he'll ultimately play, unfortunately. He could just be part of the image rehabilitation program as a player, get him healthy and get him shipped out. Bertans was white hot the other day in preseason. I didn't really watch much either post San Antonio showdown, but he's hitting enough threes to get shipped off the deadline for something else we need if that need arises. So I like that we have that flexibility there, very tradable contract there as well. Kassan Wallace is going to be Lou Dort light for who knows how long until he's Lou Dort level, and Lou Dort has the most tradable contract in like NBA history right now with the bargain we got him on. So I love that a lot. As much as I would hate to see him go, I entertained Lou for Drew Holiday for about 4 days until I realized that was not going to happen.
Should have,
but
it should have. But yeah, I get you.
I would have been ecstatic. But I mean, you can only have so many guards on the floor, I guess. But
that's what I said about Casey Wallace, and I might be wrong about that. So
right,
I said that about Casey Wallace, and here we are. I'm eating my crow, and he hasn't even played an NBA game yet. So
right, yeah. I mean, the starting 5: Shea, Chet, Giddey, J Dub, and then Lou for now. I think is very, very good, and we're not sneaking up on people anymore. I mean, not to go full degenerate, but from a betting perspective, they've been almost 60% against the spread the last 2 years. That just kind of speaks to outperforming expectations on a nightly basis. They're sticking with good teams, beating bad teams, winning more than 1-3 road games, which is important to matter in the Western Conference. And I just think, I'm not putting them 4th. I'm emotionally hedging by putting them 7. I wanted to put them like 3, but that's just asinine.
yeah.
45, I think, may be the number. I think they'll have 42 with a week left in the season, and it's just kind of like, do we care? Do we not? I really want them to get there because that 5-win jump is a pretty substantial milestone. You add Chet, second-year pro, first-year active player, and I think that the coaching aspect of it too, because a lot of times we see young teams that have the talent, maybe not necessarily coaching yet. Mark Daigneault might win Coach of the Year, honestly. If this team reaches heights that we have here, fringe play-in exempt, or even coming out of the play-in, that jump, and it's one of the hardest ones to make. We've seen Memphis make it, and now they've got a lot of questions too for all the wrong reasons. But I think this team really could make a Memphis-style jump, win a playoff series. I don't know about 2 yet. I got to see Chet play before I get
Yeah.
that crazy with it. But they could absolutely roll up on a Phoenix team or a Clippers or Lakers team down a player and do damage and come out of the playoff series. They've got one of the better home crowds in the NBA, even through the rebuild, even though it's been less than 2 seasons now, to where they're right back on the forefront of preseason NBA coverage. But I'm excited. I'm nervous because games have not had this much meaning in a couple of years since really Chris Paul left.
Yep.
But I'm excited to see Shea taking another jump towards potentially league MVP or at least playing on that level. He was first team All Pro last year. He was an MVP finalist. So I mean, there's not much room to go up, but he certainly could. And just seeing the young talent around him. I mean, he's 25, 26, and he's the oldest guy in the room almost. So seeing Giddey, he can't even buy a beer again, I don't think. Just seeing him take that next step, J-Dub, even Jay Will played well in the preseason to this point. It's exciting to see. The bit of a roster crunch is going to suck. Trey Mann may be elsewhere. There's going to be some roster spot casualties that are going to suck just because of, the few Thunder fans out there, especially in the Southeast where I'm at, that, watch this team night in, night out and get someone attached to the 15, 16 best player. You can only carry 13. So that part's going to suck as we lead up into the regular season. But I'm really, really excited about this team.
There's going to be some DMPs that are going to be head scratching to people who don't realize how deep the team's actually going to be.
To your point about expansion, we're getting there.
I think we're there. I think it's just a matter of time that I think the NBA is waiting until LeBron retires to make sure he gets a piece of the Las Vegas Aces. That's actually my full-blown conspiracy. But they are -1. By the way, I don't care about the gender thing. 60% against the spread. Shout out to Sign Up Expert. We're legally allowed to gamble in North Carolina, technically now, for the sake of this partnership. So I don't care. I'm excited to implement it more into my content. But they're -115 to finish more than 45 regular season wins. So if we're taking, the way we look at the over-unders is, what was the line for their over-under? Did you ever get that?
44.5.
Or what was the what was the money on the over-under? What was I can't figure out the word I'm looking for.
The juice?
Yeah. What was it?
Probably 110, 115.
So it was pretty close. It was right there.
Because 45 is one of those key numbers. They go by 5 on the futures market as far as those tiers go.
I guess the reason I asked is because I think that the value of what you're getting with them over 45 is actually. I mean, I don't hate the -115 because
right. No, that's very palatable. I would almost urge you, if you're actually digging into the market, the numbers, to take the playoff odds. It's a little more juiced at 130, 140, but then you take the whole wins part out of it, because if they go 44 and whatever the other number is, because I suck at math, and they come out of the play-in, then they're a playoff team, but they might not necessarily make that full 5-win leap because they won't have to. Is the only piece of advice I would give people there.
I'm glad you said that. I couldn't find it because FanDuel has so many awesome odds. I can't find everything. It was literally -110 on both sides as of right this moment. To make the playoffs and stuff like that. You're sitting here and you're like, oh well, the way it was going to fall, the way we both had it, we're looking at a difference of 6 wins if they have to go the 45 route.
Exactly.
So they're -128 to make the playoffs. So I think your bet of getting that 46. I think you're having to fight for good money there regardless. The one thing I'll end with, so we can keep rolling, is I can't waver on the fact that I had Chet at 1 for all this time, right? I mean, Paolo obviously had the year
right.
he had, and I had him there for a reason. And this is not a self-reflecting point, but it's, you won 40 games last year, and by the way, beat the Lakers in LeBron's, magical night where his scoring record. By the way, I'm still upset about that. But here's the thing: you beat a Lakers team that had a really good center rotation.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a center for the entire year, for crying out loud. Let's just be upfront about that.
No.
You just didn't. You didn't have a center that will have an NBA career beyond probably next year. So
no.
The point I'm making is Chet worth 5 wins? I've been asking that question about coaches and stuff the last couple of hours.
I think so.
1,000% he's worth 5 wins, for crying out loud. So 44.5 over. Let's keep going. Dallas, I have at 8. Do you have them at 8? I'm gonna have to ask you each time now because we're starting to get 1 to 2 off each. So Dallas at 8. Do you have Dallas at 8 as well?
I do not.
Okay. Where do you have them for context?
I have them 10.
Okay. Who do you have at 9?
At 9, I have Minnesota.
Okay. So we haven't flipped. You have
Yeah.
Dallas at 9? Yeah. All right, perfect. So Dallas 44.5. The mathematics would say that we basically have to take the under here, and that's what I did. Here's the hilarious part about this whole thing, doing this every year now, right? I think this is technically season number 4 doing something like this with the wins or doing something with the teams. This is the best supporting cast that Lucas had that I enjoy. Like, I've actually been like, wow,
Right.
I actually really like the supporting cast, and they're going to finish 8th in my opinion. That's tough. And that's honestly just the Western Conference, and that's less of like anything else I feel about the Mavericks. And if they win 43 games, I'm not surprised because that would be right behind the Thunder, who we both had at 44.5, near 45. So
Right.
Dallas, without much context, Dallas I have at 8. Minnesota, you said you have at 9, so really the same thing goes. Their over-under was only one more win than Dallas, 45.5, which, again, mathematically speaking, I'd be floored if you had the over there because that would mean you think that they're
I
a,
don't.
say,
Yeah.
6 seed. So basically, any thoughts on Dallas or Minnesota or both? And then you have, I'm assuming, the under for both. I'm just kind of trying to figure out a way to get the train moving again. But
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's two of the more exciting players to watch the all of the NBA in Anthony Edwards and Luca. For I mean, not just, you know what teams they play for. The whole thing with Cat and Rudy, that's what's holding me back from putting Minnesota higher, and I hate it because it's in spite of one of the best young players in the NBA. Because I think that is so broken as a concept and an experiment. There's no coming back from it. And financially, you really can't get out from under it as easy as you might like. If I see one more mock trade of Towns to OKC, I'm just going to completely remove myself from the internet forever because I'm so tired of that. To even think that Presti would take a kid that is clearly not an amazing locker room fit and put him in a situation like Oklahoma City that is honestly surpassed the necessary need for him at this point.
yep,
Now, if you add a player of his caliber, they're going to make him better, sure. But is it worth
yeah,
the outside stuff? No. And I think that obviously with Chet healthy, him being in many eyes the number one player in the draft class, you kind of you can close up shop there. But I mean, people said for 2 years Shea was going to the Raptors, so whatever. Um, I just hit it because I want for Anthony Edwards to propel this team to so much more.
yep,
And I feel like until one or both of those guys are gone, he just can't. It's not his fault. It's not for lack of trying either, certainly. It's just there is a hard ceiling on this team. And no matter what he does, night in, night out, he cannot break through it, in my eyes. And I'd love to be wrong about this, but I think that, and it's frustrating because you'd like to think guys, similar caliber, Shea, that are doing the same thing. And they're getting better because they have better fits around them piece wise and they're younger and they can play defense in the playoffs. It's tough, but that's where I'm at. And the Luka piece, I think that Luka has done more with worse. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Should Kyrie Irving care about basketball for once? I feel better if he was gone. I'll tell you that. But Cuban Dallas front office has done reasonably well
yep.
in putting at least pieces good enough to be dragged effectively. And I think we're getting to the point where that's not all that necessary, which is also exciting because again, you want to see guys like Ant, like Luka in the playoffs, even if it is the play
Always.
in, to get the midseason gimmick thing, whatever. There will be brackets earlier than the spring, but this part of the West is just so tough. But that's what I've got on those two.
The Edward leap scares me. It does. The Edwards leap scares me, and I'm not saying it scares me enough to think that would put them as based on my rankings, 6th in the West. It's not unreasonable. That's the scariest part about that statement is
Exactly.
we're an injury away from that being the, oh, crap, that was stupid pick. And
Right.
under, 44 based on the number, they would have to. Technically, me having them at 9 below Dallas, I just like Dallas more and I like Luka more, I guess is kind of the point. I just can't understand the logjam at center, regardless of Minnesota's, ties to what that meant for how much they gave up. But,
Right.
45.5, the 44.5 for Dallas, it is kind of this weird sticky situation where I'm kind of stuck and I'm kind of going to, if I decide to actually be a degenerate and put money on both those teams, which I will not, but I will lose money on both of them because there's a very likely chance they flip-flop each other essentially, in any
Right.
capacity.
You could be a win short in both of those. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, of course. And that's kind of the issue I have. Minnesota, 45.5. I honestly think that's the most like confusing line on here. When I
Right.
saw the 45.5, I was like, it's got to be Edwards and Edwards alone. And I mean, I just
Mhm.
think that's ridiculous. Number 10, before we get to some of the bottom feeders here in the last 5 to 10 minutes, bottom feeders would actually probably be a pretty hard, that'd probably be a pretty poor thing to say about some of these teams.
Mm.
I guess the question is, do you have the Clippers or do you have someone else at 10?
I've got them there. I
Okay.
think they do get in, and I don't know that it's not going to be pretty. I don't know if I'd even pick them to come out of the play-in, just
Okay.
because if you don't know who's going to be there, you know, how far does Ballmer go to put an enticing product in that new stadium? Because if they're not inspiring at the deadline, they will not look the same. And we saw it with Phoenix with a new owner who's not paying for a new bajillion-dollar arena. So I think Ballmer has
Yep.
certainly showed a propensity to make things happen when needed, which is why Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is in Oklahoma City. Thank God. So it's and you can comment on how well he did in those moves, or tell the truth and say he didn't. But I think that he will continue to throw things at the wall until it sticks because that's going to keep him a billionaire. Um, so just all of that swirling around, being a cloud over the heads of guys that have shown an inability to stay healthy, as amazing as they are. Kawhi's obviously won a championship. It's it sucks because that duo, 100% healthy, is good enough to host a playoff series, but we just have not seen it in so long. It's hard to just imagine they flip a switch. It's kind of the same reason I'm down on Golden State as well, at least relative to you and probably the rest of national media. But they've got more questions than answers, and I hate
That's a
it
good
for
point.
Westbrook if he's even there. I think that the starting lineup on its face, Russ, PG, Kawhi. Then you get to Robert Covington and like Zubats, and it's just like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, this is not.
And you make a good point earlier when you said that, like, well, actually, I'm gonna push back on it, I guess, as the fact that like it could be a good point in the past. But you mentioned if those two at face value could host a playoff series. I mean, I don't think those two with this surrounding core that you kind of just landed the plane with was. I mean, that 3 through 5, and then I mean, hell, even 6 through 8 to 9,
Not good.
it's bad. And
Yeah.
honestly, at that point, you miss. If Paul George misses 44 games again or whatever it was, and Kawhi Leonard misses any time at all, which he
Right.
will, of course. But the point is you're relying on. I'm just going to say some names here, and you tell me who you like.
Yeah.
You're relying on Brandon Boston, Russell Westbrook, a rookie Jordan Miller, Kobe Brown, who they really like. They picked in the first round. I like Kobe Brown, didn't like him in the first round. Marcus Morris, if I didn't say that name, good grief. Bones Highland, I really do like still. Josh Primo, I'm gonna leave that one alone. Terrence Mann, who mentioned the starting lineup. This is the guy that could be the piece for James Harden, which makes this team worse
Right.
ultimately as well.
Yes,
I
it
don't care what
does.
anyone
Yeah.
says, but Robert Covington, Norman Powell, who's also expensive in our fantasy league, Nicholas Batum. I've learned my lesson there, and then Zubac and Mason Plumlee. So you're looking at a team that might win 30 games without Kawhi and Leonard and Paul George, and I'm not guaranteed to get the minimum that they need to win any award, much less an award that neither of them will see again probably the rest of their career. So, God, at 45 and a half, I don't understand. That is the one. I take back everything I said about, well, it's the same as Minnesota. 45 and a half is the same. So they both are fishy.
That
45 and a half for
surprised
both
me.
those. Yeah, the fact that
Yeah.
both of those are in any kind of tier together is ridiculous. And we're
Right.
about to see, talking about a plummet, like this line for the West. I mean, I think there are teams here that I really do like from a talent standpoint, but we're going to rapid fire them pretty much because
Right.
I want people to actually listen to them. Hopefully, the Utah and all those guys that we really enjoy for the obvious that who we left out. But
Mm.
anything else on the Clippers before we get to the teams that we'll be hopefully picking in the lottery?
No, any optimism on them is probably wishful thinking, and I'm guilty of it because I love watching Westbrook play. It's just,
I like the wishful thinking part of that. That was
and if
good.
they trade for James Harden, forget it. They're going to win 25 games. It's just he is yet to really add to the championship potential of the team. He has done nothing but lower it, similar to Kyrie Irving. So I just think that that rumor alone terrifies me enough to go under, and I feel very comfortable putting them below teams that have star players that give a shit, to be
my
quite frank.
wallet, my wallet
So
alone is why I want to go under. Like, I mean,
if
just
they
I'll
trade for
take the
James
free money.
Harden, I will bet against them every night from now until they miss the play-in,
Yeah.
because at some point the names, even if it's one or two names, are not enough for an NBA team to function. So yeah, that's where I'm at on them.
All right, I'll be quick on Utah, and I'm assuming you have them somewhere in this tier. So I have Utah at 11. I don't understand how a team that won 37 games, people said by accident last year, can get worse by over 2 games. They would have to be 2.5 games worse if I did the math right. 37, yeah, 36, or yeah, they'd have to lose two or and a half or 3 more games for me to be like, yeah, that makes sense. And they got better, and their rookie class was unbelievable. That is point blank. The whole point I'm making is even if any of one of those guys will play, and it'll definitely be Keontae George. As much as I love Taylor Hendricks, who's looked
Right.
really good in preseason, Keontae George looks like, if his father, who by the way, I found out his father's a 16-year pro in Europe. I did not know that
Really?
in this
That's
entire
no
draft
idea.
process. I don't know how that slipped me, but yeah, his father's a 16 or 15-year pro in the Euro, some league in Europe that's really good. And it'll be George and it'll be Taylor Hendricks. And I'm not saying those guys are worth the 2-win bump, whatever this typical question I'd ask you is, but Utah's going to be better. I mean, they got better, and they're not going to lose 3 more games. I just don't understand how that happens, and Danny Ainge won't let that happen. Even because this is not Victor Wembanyama we're talking about. If they were going to tank, it was going
No,
to be last
yeah,
year. So,
that's true
um,
too.
35 and a half for Utah. I have over 36 or 37 is probably safe. Do you have Utah at 11? If not, who do you have? And we'll kind of go to them.
I have New Orleans because I just hope to God that Zion wins and plays basketball. That is really
I have him at
the
12.
beginning and end of my analysis
So
there.
I have him at 12, so
Is
we're not far off.
right. If he plays basketball, they will be better than that. But we just haven't seen it. Not any quantity enough to project them to make the playoffs. And what we've been over is it just loaded West, even past the 4 or 5 we think can come out of it. There's just no margin for error down there. And I think Zion having the highest ceiling and lowest floor puts them at 11 for me out. The Clippers could be the Hindenburg, and that may be what puts them in as a 10 seed, which would be a terrifying 10 seed to play,
Yeah.
should they be healthy or even close at that point. But yeah, that's who I've got 11. I mean, Utah, I went under just because, and I had to look this up before we did this. They started 9-3 last year, 10-5. Like they were the story of the NBA in October and early November.
They
And
were
I
a
don't think
they
that
were a resounding topic between the two of us on overreactions. Don't get me wrong.
they were like the
Yeah,
one
I
seed
got
for
you.
like 3 weeks, which is them in
Yeah, they were.
Portland won like 40 of like 60, which is absurd. So because of that, I really do think they could be a better team with a record that doesn't show it when you compare it to last year's, because I don't think they win 9 of 12
That's a good point.
potentially at any point, which is not to say they're not going to be a good team or an improved team. But when you start with that,
Hmm.
I don't know if they have a stretch like that again. Certainly not to open. I don't think they're not going to catch people by surprise more. I don't think they've drafted well enough. They've shown well enough on the court last year that I don't. I just don't expect that torrid initial pace. And they fell back down to earth, obviously, which allowed them to draft in the positions they did and have the success they did in draft night. But I just think that 35 and a half, and it may be 35. And I probably, they could be closer to 40 than 30. Honestly, I wouldn't be flabbergasted, to be honest. But I just think that, they brought in John Collins. That could be a pretty good addition if he's in the right spot and a good headspace to contribute to a team on the rise. Kessler obviously showed us everything he needed to and a lot more last year. So there's a lot to be excited about there. Laurie, my fantasy king until I had to trade him for my guy Shea. Um, Colin Sexton, another guy who, right environment, good, headspace, all that stuff. That's going to be conducive to winning. THT, I don't know what you think about him now that he's outside of Los Angeles, but that's a decently contributing player to a team that has no contingent aspirations. Yeah, but that's a guy who can stick around, until that day comes where he's going to be replacing to contend. So I've got them That's one of the least confident ones I'm in, just because if you start thinking about the
Fair.
bottom teams in the West and how good this team could be. You mentioned the young infusion of talent even this past draft. They nailed it with Kessler, and they're going to do it again this year. Um, so that's another one I hope I'm wrong on, at least win total wise, maybe not seed wise, but they should be in the play-in mix.
So we have Utah flipped and New Orleans flipped. Do you have Utah at 12?
Yes.
All right. So the money's with you. So 35, under 35 and a half for Utah. I just looked it up on FanDuel. Is minus 104. The over is minus 118. So you're probably honestly better value there. I don't blame you if you want to put, sprinkle some there. So the Pelicans thing, I'll just be quick. I think fully healthy, I'm still right. The under. Like, and you technically went over. Well, no, you went under also because of just, the way the math had to add up, right? 44 and a half.
No, I went under. Yeah.
So I think we're both 44 and a half is nuts. Like the fact that they're one win less.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe we're just undervaluing them. I guess the health of Zion, you mentioned it, but like 44
that is the swing piece of the entire thing.
Exactly. And that puts them in a tier where they're better potentially than they're definitely better than the Clippers if he's healthy, I think. And then they're
if he plays 70
better than
games
Timberwolves.
of the best we've seen so far, they can win 50 games. He's that good, and I don't think they're going to. But
exactly,
they have the highest ceiling and the lowest floor, and it's directly tied to their franchise player.
It's mostly, but I hate the roster around him. I don't love CJ McCollum at his age and stage in career. Yeah. I like the young pieces that they're building with Zion, but like CJ McCollum's not the reason I'm going 45.
No. If you could clone Alvarado, every team in the league would do it.
I just don't get it, and I'm trying to figure out now, and I'm looking it up to make sure as we keep going here, the Pelicans where the money is. Like, yeah,
I think it's usually the excuse that Zion's not playing, so we have to try and build around him, which is awful. That's why he's going to leave ultimately.
Plus 104, plus 104 for the over. So then,
that should be where that price is, honestly.
The line just, I guess it always ends up evening out, and Vegas always ends up being right, and it pisses me off every time. All right, so the Pelicans 11-12 there. We got again fully healthy. I think that's still an under, and at that 44 and a half is just they're trying to get people. They're trying to get people to take the Zion healthy money above. That's really what it is. So
quickly, the four teams in the West at 44 and a half: Dallas, New Orleans, Oklahoma City, Sacramento. New Orleans is fourth on that list for me.
Here's what's even crazier: the difference between what we think is the difference between the two of them. You put them in, you end up having them in at 11 or having it at 11, so completely missing it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's a 7-spot difference in the best team we have on that.
Right. If you rank by the
a 7-spot difference is asinine. They should not. No two teams with the same over under, regardless of how Vegas makes money on the side here. There's no reason those should ever be 7 spots apart. Portland, San Antonio, and Houston. We're just going to kind of do these all together, I think, for the sake of time and the fact that
that's the order for me. So.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So Portland, San Antonio, Houston. I had over for Portland 28.5. I think they're kind of the Jazz type of team. I think they got better than we thought.
Yes,
we thought the Jazz were going to be terrible. Easy answer for me there. San Antonio 28.5 over. Let me make sure I got the number right of how many they won last year. They won 22.
22.
And is Victor Wembanyama worth that many wins? Well, probably.
I said no. So
you said no, and it's probably not.
I did,
but probably not by much, right? I assume he is at least a 3 to 4 win jump. So,
oh yeah, they'll be right up on it. I think that them getting close to 30, you don't know who's going to coach. It just
it's true.
I don't love any of the pieces of that. It's not anything to do with Wembanyama and his projections. Whatever, he's going to be amazing. He has been in the dry run games, but I just don't think. What can one man do with that around him? The check comparisons are going to happen. They're both rookie of the year eligible. But there is no Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There is no Josh Giddey. There's no Lee Dort. There's just so many things at the disposal that Chet has that Wemby does not. Yep. So if you ask me who's more likely to take a 5-win jump, I'm taking Oklahoma City, and it's not really that close in my opinion. And again, it's not Wemby's fault. So if they do win 28 games, they get 6 games better. And somebody's like, they went under because Wemby sucked. That's probably not. No, it's going to be in spite of him. Just like, Edwards or Luka or, any of these other stars kind of isolated on their own little islands as far as the overall performance of the team, because one man can only do so much.
That's perfectly well said. Here's the I guess the caveat for me would be if he is this player that we think he is, which has showed it so far in a really
Oh, then I'll
intriguing
be
matchup.
wrong by a lot.
No, not even wrong by a lot. All it needs to be is what, 7 better?
Yeah.
So I think he's 7 wins better. I just think that they lost so many last year. The gap seems insurmountable, but you're going to see progression from other guys as well. And I think that will contribute to it as well. Keldon Johnson is a really good complimentary piece. Sohan showed some really good stuff. So,
Mhm.
not to be long winded on the 14th best team in the Western Conference, but I mean, Victor Wembanyama is worth every bit of the hype I think he's
Yeah.
deserving
A
so
talent his
far.
caliber deserves the mention. Yeah.
And I think that if you're, you are probably, you're talking about the sweating one out earlier. I think that one, you will be sweating that one out without a doubt.
Yes. Probably. Yeah.
One I don't think we'll be sweating out to end with is Houston. Putting the bow on this, is Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks and Ime Udoka worth 10 wins to a team that, let me be clear, I showed the shirt at the top. I bought this in the arena last year. I got to see what, obviously they didn't play the full lineup, in April, right? Because that's basically when they start, people start shutting down or whatever for the playoffs. Which I guess they weren't in the playoffs anyway, so I don't know why I said that. But the point is their best players were out there. I got to see Şengün, Green. The
Hmm.
list gets kind of tight after that. But I got to see a couple of those guys, and they were bad. They were unbelievably bad. It was probably the worst team of basketball I've seen that wasn't a low major college basketball team. Actually, like genuinely, and it's sad to say that because I really do. I enjoyed the fan base was unbelievable. The arena was awesome. Like you could have told me the ratio of Lakers fans, you would think it would have been Lakers fans, especially with the Final Four being in town. Like there was a lot of Rockets fans there. Like there was a ton of them, and they're faithful through and through. I love those guys to death, but I don't know, man. 31 and a half. If it's 31, we win money. That's kind of, I guess, the win here. But ultimately, I think the way I ended up having it happen is they had to be under I can't get the number out of my head with 31 and a half to 28 and a half for San Antonio
Right.
because I don't think there's I don't think there's a 20 win team or 20. I don't think there's a non 30 win team in the West. So I think it has to be 30 Rockets,
Yeah.
31 Thunder, or 31 Spurs. But then I'm asking for almost a 10-game jump. That's kind of a lot. So I'm probably going to be wrong somewhere in the bottom 3, and I don't think it's Portland. So I'm willing to be wrong on the Rockets because they're terrible, and this is year 1 of Ime Udoka. So I'm sure you have nothing you would care to add about the Rockets. No, I'm
I
kidding.
mean,
I'm totally joking. But
they have sucked. They will suck. They will continue to suck. And I don't care what Twitter clips you put together with Şengün. They're not a good team.
yeah,
Whatever Ime Udoka and Fred VanVleet do add, Dylan Brooks will subtract that and more because he is not conducive to any kind of winning environment whatsoever on any level of basketball and on any continent, I might add, which he may get his passport renewed very soon if he keeps this up. I would hate for the continuity of this team to lead to another coach being thrown in front of the moving train. That is what this organization is as it starts to wreck. I thought Silas was given 2-7 offsuit and told to win $1 million pot. So, Imo Ducka, obviously a little more name recognition, was with Boston team. He left Boston because reasons you're well aware of. So, similar to your Josh Primo point, moving on. Um, it's and I hate it for Jabari Smith Jr. too because he's not the only one that's going to be. I mean, Jalen Green's still there, but they have
they've
the
got
talent
talent. Yeah, they do.
to take a similar path to Oklahoma City that starts with a good coach, which they may have. We just don't really know yet because you know
He only
Emo
coached
Duck
what,
was
3
given Jason
years?
Tatum.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, true. Yeah,
so we really have the books out on that too.
yeah.
Which is again, as we get lower, the more questions we have. Like does Dylan Brooks take this under and then continue his BS the entire season? Because then that will certainly hit. Should they jettison him to Shanghai at the deadline? Who knows? I don't know. That if I knew for a fact Dylan Brooks didn't survive the deadline, I may go over just because I think that's addition by subtraction, as it will be in Memphis once they get job back. But I mean, this team has won 22 games, 20 games, and 17 in the 72 game seasons. I mean, this is not. I mean, they haven't won 25 games in a presidential term. So I mean, this
When you
is
put it that way, though, honestly, that's the selling point for why it's under. Like, even if the
oh
31 and a
yeah,
half
no,
looks
this is an
stupid,
organization that is
the reason
content
they go over.
with firing coaches and continuing to win 20 games a year. So it's just until proven otherwise, which
I
for the sake
like.
of the young talent they do have,
I
I
didn't
hope to
think we'd
God it
spend this.
happens.
I
But
didn't think we'd spend this much time on him, but I like the point you made about if Fred VanVleet's 5 wins, then Dylan Brooks subtracts 5, so then that's
yeah,
a wash. And
at least,
then you're
yeah,
asking, is he
that's
Manchester
net
worth
negative.
5? Yeah,
Yeah,
and then you're asking if is he worth 5 to 10. So I don't know. I really want them to be better, but and obviously Amen Thompson. We didn't even mention Cam Whitmore, assuming he's fully healthy. Kevin Porter Jr. is still listed on this roster, but we know about that.
yeah,
And then just I don't know, man. Tari Eason and some others I'm really hopeful for. So I'll ask
right.
you this really quick. Last year I believe it was last year, maybe it was 2 off seasons ago now. It's 2 off seasons ago. I picked the Celtics to finish 11th in the Eastern Conference. For those people that have been around for that long, thank you. And they finished, you ready for it? Second. So is there a team in the West, because I don't think the East it's going to matter. Is there a team in the West that happens and you're like, you know what, I'll live with it, or I was an idiot? Is there a team that you're like, that's the one?
Golden State, probably,
Where'd you have them
just
again?
because where I'm at, I had them fifth, just relative to
Not horrible. I mean, they go from 5 to 4. I mean, that could happen.
right. Honestly, going the other way, Phoenix, they could be a disaster.
That's
I
fair.
could be betting on the Orange Nets to finish as a 2 seed, which is just not proven to be a good idea historically. Wherever Durant goes and Curry doesn't follow, success does not usually follow him. So that's probably the biggest potential overconfident thing I have, even going back to the East.
I would say the other way
Yeah,
around for me.
Phoenix makes me the most nervous for sure.
Minnesota would be the other way around team for me though. Like if everything goes right, I'm like, oh crap. I'm not saying
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
11-2 difference like it was for
right,
Boston, but if they pop because of some injuries and because some other things like them doing
right.
well, I mean, we're gonna look back and be like 9. What the heck
I
were we
mean,
thinking?
almost all those teams, Edwards, Luca, Zion. I mean, there's that one guy you're like, wow, that could be the one that makes him look dumb.
Yeah,
That's a common thing, so they kind of catch each other out,
yeah,
almost. So
it's fair.
it's going to be wild in the West for sure.
I don't know how we did it, but there's 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in the Chargers Cowboys game. It's 17-7. So
They're going
beautifully
to lose for
put.
sure. So
Well, even if they don't, you're gonna at least get a chance to watch it. Hopefully, it's not the result that you just stated, but couple things. I'll make sure I get the plugs right correctly for the East. We didn't have a chance to do that because we had to jump right out and get going. But first of all, thank you for coming again, hanging out with me, talking NBA over unders. I don't think I did too bad with 35 minutes of research when I've written 90 team previews through this point. So all that being said, I am very happy to say that the NBA season starts in less than 3 weeks. Plug away on the way out. I know y'all got some cool stuff happening. I know Clemson's got some games and stuff, and you were, I think, like we talked about pre-recording, you were up in South Bend this weekend. So, but plug anything with the pod. I appreciate you coming once again. Thanks.
yeah, like you said, first off, I witnessed the end of Caleb Williams' repeat Heisman bid. He threw 3 picks in a resounding loss to the almost ACC Irish. That was a bucket list game for me and a great venue that I was fortunate enough to go to through some soon-to-be family. So really fortunate to get to experience that. Got a podcast with my college roommates, the 1009 podcast. It's all over my Twitter. We're on Apple and Spotify, just talking a lot of Clemson football, a lot of football in general. We will talk the disaster that was the Braves postseason and why it's Morgan Wallen's fault, probably, if I know my roommates well enough. And yeah, anything serious, non-serious, we pretty much touch on it. But we're Clemson centered, so that's produced some really good reactions because we lost to Duke this year. So if you're a South Carolina fan or just hate Clemson in general, be sure to go look that one up. We were all pretty down in the dumps after that one. But as always, I appreciate Trevor lending me the invitation to come on here. I enjoyed it. First full season preview I've ever done. I felt pretty good about my picks. Kevin Durant will probably let me down one more time, but that's fine because I'll still take joy out of it. So with that being said, I appreciate it. We made it through both, and go Chargers, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get this one wrapped up and get it out. For those of you that made it all the way this far, thank you. Like, comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Subscribe to the 1009 and everything for them will be linked below as well. Twitter, all the great stuff there. A lot of boots on the ground stuff this offseason from you guys baseball wise. So yeah, thanks for keeping me in the loop with football and baseball when I'm trying to not lose my mind writing the thing I talked about earlier. But the pre-order for the College Basketball Magazine, it should not say pre-order anymore because that's how unprepared I am. It should say officially live, ecbmagazine.bigcartel.com. You'll be able to find your favorite team and their preview. And the only reason I'm even bringing it up is because I have your Tigers in a pretty comfortable place I think you'll like. And I'm excited for this season. I will probably be at a few games of theirs. It will not be in South Carolina, probably, but I got a few of their games on the calendar, and I'm very excited to cover them. I think PJ Hall is going to be one of those guys that I'm going to regret not giving a Player of the Year vote for, but Kyle Filipowski still exists. So this has been the Two Pointers Podcast. Thank you again to Grayson for coming on. Don't forget to use code 2Pointers as all of these seasons are back in full swing. Football, baseball, if you're in a city that has a baseball team and this far of the playoffs, it's probably not in the playoffs because they probably lost, but somebody's still in the baseball playoffs. You can get $20 off your first purchase, SeatGeek.com, link in the top of the description. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor Sign Up Expert, signupexpert.com, link in the description below as well. All right, I haven't done that in a long time. I'll have to chop that one up, but this has been the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and I am so glad basketball's back.